everything looks good on our end. So thank you so much for joining me.
Mhm.
So much to talk about. One thing that it hit me as I was doing research for this episode is I didn't truly appreciate how tough it was training for a triathlon. A
Yeah.
couple of years ago, I got into Mark Sisson's,
Yeah.
what do you call it, primal endurance. And
Yeah.
I was in the Army for 8 years, and I tried to get out of running every time I had an opportunity because I'm not a very tall guy. And of course, they'd put, big, tall, healthy gentlemen like you up front, and I'm in the back, my legs are moving double time to keep up. So I never fell in love with running later until I ran into Mark Sisson and
Okay.
changed the way that I started to train. But the moment that it really hit me, Ryan, is I just assumed an athlete was an athlete was an athlete. And when I saw Lance Armstrong, who's arguably one of the greatest cyclists that ever lived,
Sure.
when he ran in that marathon, it almost killed him. I could see his face, and I mean,
Yeah.
it dogged him. And I thought, my God, these triathletes, they swim, they run, they bike. So my first question is, what do you think is different as far as mindset and training when it comes to the triathletes versus the people who master a solo event?
I think, well, maybe expectation. I say that because when you know you have a specific distance to go, right? And let me just preface this by saying I've spoken with other professional triathletes. I'm not a professional. I've spoken with professionals, and I'm like, how do you like switch between sports? And they're like, you just focus on one sport at a time because it's like a different movement. Yeah, they're all different movements, and you're dealing with different levels of fatigue as you go down the sport. I was at a pizza place the other day and I had an Ironman jacket on, and somebody's like, "Oh, what's the sports? You swim, you bike, you run, you swim." I'm like, "You're not swimming at the end because you will die because you are going to be so tired at the end." But I think the profession, the in long distance endurance athletes, I think it's the expectation of how long you're actually going to be suffering, and the ability to train yourself to suffer for that long. That's the only difference. Uh, One example of that is had to run like 20 miles in order to train for this marathon at the end of the run, end of the race. And I remember at about 19 and a half miles, my knees started getting like, I don't know, tired. Um, but I'd run, let's say 12 miles the day, maybe the week before, maybe it was 18, right? And maybe at like 17 and a half miles, my knees started getting tired. But I knew that day when I was running 20 miles that I was going to end at 20 miles. So the expectation that I was going to end soon, I don't know if this is like scientifically valid, but my expectation of how far I had to go made me feel better because I'm like, oh, I still got this far. You could also feel worse because you're like, oh my gosh. So I did Maryland, the Ironman Maryland in 2022, and I was like 3 miles into the run, and I'm just like, I'm in trouble, because you got to fuel correctly too, right? Because if you're not fueling, you're not putting energy in the right direction, and that's how people really they bonk out. That's how they don't finish, or sometimes people do die. But that's mostly on the swim because they drown.
And I've heard that phrase a lot, Ryan, bonk out, because I read
Yeah,
a bunch of ultra marathon runners'
yeah.
books. And I guess in a way, I got caught up like, I think it's not Daniel Kahneman, but Kotler. I can't think of the guy's
Hmm.
first name,
Oh,
but he deals with
Steve
a lot
Kotler,
of
right?
Kotler because he's
Yeah.
obsessed, and I'm obsessed with
Flow
people
state.
that are with that flow state. That's right,
Hmm.
operating at absolutely the best. How do they do it? And all I can say is, Ryan, I've barely touched the tail of the dragon a few times. I've seen what I
Yeah.
can really do under extreme circumstances, sometimes good, sometimes not so good. And it's unbelievable what our capacity is. So I'll give you just a short example, and we're both authors, and we'll get into your book here in just a second. I'm really excited to talk about that. Yesterday, I think it was yesterday, I do so many interviews. Shanti Henderson came on. She's 18 and she just published her 22nd book.
Whoa.
So yeah, I mean, come on. And this book, the one that she came on to promote that she wrote last month, it's 804 pages.
What?
So my point is, I have to keep reminding myself to keep being around people like you and people like her because as hard as I think I work, because all my friends around here are like, Robert, oh, you work so hard. But then compared to Dan Martell or
Yeah.
compared to Dan Kennedy or compared to, these guys, you guys are sleeping standing up. So
Yeah.
I'm trying to understand where that can tap into a little bit of that.
Yeah.
So I'm fascinated
That is
and
crazy. 20 books at 18.
22, 22. And she speaks like, I mean, you can tell her books are good just from
Yeah.
her diction.
Yeah.
She first published in sixth grade. When I was in sixth grade, I was upset that I had dropped my Boba Fett Star Wars character down in a mud puddle and I couldn't find it. I mean, she's publishing books. So,
Yeah, well,
yeah,
it sounds like that's the muscle that she puts the reps in on, right?
yeah,
Writing every day. What's that book? Stephen Pressfield. Is it Stephen Pressfield? No, yeah, it is. The Art of War. No, The War of
yeah.
Art.
The War of Art.
He's
He's
like,
one of my
you just
favorite
got to
authors.
go and you got to fight the battle every day and then do it again, do it again, do it
Sit in the
again.
chair. I
And
changed my style because of him. I was going by word count when I sat down, and now I go by time. It's two
mm,
hours,
yeah,
and it doesn't matter. If I can't think of anything, which thankfully is rare. I'm not saying my ideas are good, but I don't have writer's block because
yeah,
it's like jogging. You don't have jogger's block. If your legs are moving,
yeah.
you're
I
jogging. It
think if
doesn't
you're
matter
in
how
like the
quick.
habit of doing that all the time, you're like, this is what I do. And that
That's right.
becomes your identity, you know?
That's right. Well, I like what you said just a moment ago about if you're putting the reps in for it,
Yeah.
right? So if you're doing, and this isn't your first book we're about to get into. This is actually your second book, which is
Yeah.
fantastic. And two books in less than 2 years, that's very impressive in and of itself.
Yeah, I mean, the maybe I'm just like go towards things that are painful and make me want to not have done that. But I think the once you know the process of doing it and you know the process of having to sit down and go through the pain. So maybe triathlons informs writing books. I'll probably do another one after this one because I'm like, I could probably adjust that a little bit. And it's a fun story because it has characters and everything. And I'm like, I want to explore this avenue because I didn't cover everything I needed to, or I think I wanted to in the first one, as in like this Al Dente book, you know? So there's a lot of different ways to approach what's next. So that's what I'll do.
Sure, sure. And I'll say I did something very unusual myself. I did a second edition of my first book
Mm,
before I
mm,
moved on because I'm halfway through my second book. And I had that same feeling you did. And I expanded the same book again because I
mm.
really felt like that book was self-contained. Otherwise,
Yeah,
and there were no unlike yours. Yours has character, so it makes a lot more sense to expand that possibly into a serial.
yeah.
So for me, I just went back to the wheelhouse and added
Well, was yours
the
yours is nonfiction, right?
nonfiction. That's correct.
Yeah,
And that's what's brilliant about your book. The first book that made me think when I started reading a background on benefits with friends,
yeah.
yeah, I had to train myself to say it properly.
I know, me too, man.
I still can't say my own subtitle, and
Yeah.
I've even revised it from the first to second edition. I still don't have it memorized. Isn't that terrible? But I thought of the book by Eliyahu Goldratt,
Yeah,
The
I
Goal.
actually, that's one of the books I loved. And I'm like, I want to write something like this, you know?
Yeah, yeah, that hit me immediately. I was like, okay. So for the audience listening, it's a business novel. Like,
Mhm.
would you agree that it's kind of in the same vein as
Yep.
Goldratt's The Goal?
Yeah.
And
That
what
one,
a
Built to Sell, I think, by Warrelau. And then there's another book by Patrick Lencioni, which is The Five Dysfunctions of a Team. These are all very similar in that they're like stories about characters that go through stuff and then they have to figure out stuff. And then, because that's what a story is, right? You have a situation, a challenge, and then you resolve yourself, and then, oh, you're better at the end. Hopefully, maybe you die. I don't know.
Well, you have a double challenge there, Ryan, because my book's very nuts and bolts. And actually, when I went back to revise it, I had to add a little more narrative. I had to spice it up a little bit because
Yeah,
it was a little bit too much like a recipe book. But
yeah,
my fear back then as a first time author was getting the review that people say it could have been an email, it could have been a pamphlet, it could have been shorter.
yeah,
So mine is very, a lot of meat and very little fat, but I had to There were a few areas where it was so information dense that I went back and broke those sections up. But you had two
Mhm.
challenges. You're having to create this very compelling narrative. You have to make the audience care about these characters. So you're thinking
Mhm.
about character development and these other layers I didn't have to worry about. So, and I assume your first book was much more nuts and bolts. So how did you
Yeah.
make that mental transition to you're going to create these characters?
Um, well, I actually wanted to make the narrative, right? I'm like, I'd love to write a book about us. I like creating stories, and when I decided to do this, I'm like, I need to learn about the benefits industry, and how can I do this in a fun way? How can I speak to people that know a lot about this and actually have them respond to me? And how can I reach out to them, have them respond to me, and then have them sit down and take time to actually do this, you know? So that's another fun part about it because I get to learn from people. And then I thought, okay, I can take what I know. So the principles from my other book, which is right here, is it over? Yeah, it's right there. The digital marketing book for financial advisors, book on digital marketing for financial advisors. So the principles from that book are heavily infused into this book because where's the book? It's over there somewhere. Or maybe it's there. Anyways, the principles from the first book are infused into the new book because they don't change, you know? So I took what I knew about marketing, I applied it to what this guy needs to know about marketing his business, which is what we do with BrokersBloc, right? Yes, we help brokers, specifically independent benefits brokers, find new carriers and find plans for their clients. But we also help them do marketing, which is a really unique aspect of our business that a lot of GAs don't do, right? But this guy, he had to come from the perspective of not knowing anything about the industry, which was the perspective that I had. So I'm not going to say that I am al dente in the book, but a lot of my background comes from the things that he has to learn or him having to interview these people. So I wouldn't say it was like a huge mental leap, but I would say that I had to figure out how to incorporate the things that he learned in different ways, right? Because this is the fun thing about a narrative book, because he maybe he's reading a book somewhere, right? He's in a cafe reading a book, and he's probably reading the book because I saw an article and I couldn't speak with the author, and so I just had to figure out how to incorporate that into the book, right? Or he did speak with somebody, and so I put them at a Texas Roadhouse because I like Texas Roadhouse. I thought that was a great place to have the conversation, right? And these are people that I know now because I interviewed them for the book, right? Or maybe he, like one of the situations, so I gave the contributors of the book, contributors meaning the people I interviewed, I asked them, I'm like, hey, can you look at this chapter, make sure like the things I'm saying are accurate? Because again, I don't know I don't know as much as I should know about benefits still, because I'm still learning, right? So I want to make sure the experts are like verifying this is accurate. So I took their interview, I molded that into a conversation, I sent it to them. I'm like, does this work? And one of the contributors, she's like, hey, we need to adjust this. And I was like, okay, how do I figure this into their situation where they're sitting at a Texas Roadhouse? And so like somebody goes to the bathroom and then he's like reading a pamphlet at the table, you know? So I had to infuse all these no like learning situations into the book by having him consume media in some format. Or maybe there's one situation where he's at a bowling alley. And he's at a bowling alley for a very specific reason, and that's because one of the people I interviewed was talking about how level funded health plans is like having the poles up or the brackets up right at a bowling alley. So I'm like, oh, they're going to be in a bowling alley now, right? But that's a cool bowling alley. I've never been to a really cool bowling alley. But anyways,
The
I try
Rock
to
and Bowl in New
infuse
Orleans, I can
the
take it. Sorry, go ahead.
what
The Rock and Bowl in
is it
New
good?
Orleans. They have rock concerts and it's a bowling alley. It's an you talk about they've got it figured out. Sorry, go ahead.
Well, maybe the episode or the second book, he's going to be based in New Orleans and he goes to Rock and Bowl. I don't know. See, this was the cool thing about this book. I could like take these situations and craft a narrative about that would make it memorable and fun to read because when people think about benefits, they just think about, okay, do I get a 401k and, my health plan and like an ID card for my company or whatever, or I gotta choose about this. So I needed to make it fun and engaging. So it was actually more fun than I expected, but editing it is always tough because you're like, oh, what do I take out here? Am I saying this right? Does this actually, it's always going to be the hardest thing, right? Writing is easy, editing is much harder.
I agree. I agree. Two different skill. It's like being a triathlete. A really strong swimmer might not be a really
Yeah,
good runner. And editing and writing, there,
yeah,
obviously those are two completely different
yeah,
career fields. When I got some help from an editor, I paid help
yeah.
on the first version of my book, and this guy was hotshot LA editor, been in the business 40. His resume looked fantastic.
Mm,
He just didn't care about my book the way I cared about my book. And that's the problem. You can have somebody with all of these, letters behind their name, but are they going to treat
sure.
it like it's your baby? But I
Yeah,
learned that just like there's all these different subsets of athletes, there's all these different types of editors. And what I really needed at that time with my book is what's called a developmental editor. I didn't
mm,
really need that. Where he is further at the end of the stage. But me being a first time author, I didn't know that. Now, for your book, who are you speaking to in the book? In other words, who is your
yeah,
customer
yeah.
avatar, your demographic?
Yeah. There's two, right? The first one, these are the people that don't really need to know a lot about benefits, but they might need to know about marketing their business, right? These are the benefits brokers, the independent benefits brokers. These are the people that BrokersBloc goes after because we help independent benefits brokers not only help them find more carriers for their plans and their clients, but we help them market themselves, right? So it's the independent benefits brokers, but also there might be a financial advisor out there that wants to incorporate benefits into their service offering and they just don't know about benefits, right? So this helps them educate themselves on the world of benefits because there's, as you might imagine, a lot of different acronyms that come up in benefits and people would just, table stakes of what to know. And it would be helpful for them to know about these things. They're not going to be a master they're not going to get their MA in benefits by reading this book. They'll need to get a license, honestly, to actually be able to offer it. Or they can speak with an actual broker that's more of a referral deal. But the short answer is two audiences, possibly a third, which is just business owners that want to learn about benefits. So benefits brokers, financial advisors, and then business owners that want to learn about benefits.
When Something I think about when I talk to entrepreneurs, and it's very similar to the question that I asked about the book.
Yeah.
I find, and this has also been in my personal experience, there is the person that I can help the most based on my skill set. And then there's the person I really enjoy helping. It's
Mm,
not always the same person. It's not
yeah.
always the same type of business.
Yeah.
There's my wheelhouse and there's where I have fun. But if you could get it down to as far as broker's block, when somebody comes to you, which person are you able to move the needle for the
Yeah.
most? Now, I'm not saying your favorite type of client, but the one that
Yeah.
you can really supercharge.
I mean, but any benefits broker that's not at a huge house, right? And some that are, but the people that want, if their clients have very traditional plans at what it's called a BUCA, which is a Blue Cross Blue Shield, that's also considered Anthem, United Healthcare, Cigna or Aetna, if they have plans
Mhm.
there that they want to figure out, okay, we need some more competitive plans, right? There's a huge long tail of carriers out there that are trying to figure out ways to get into the market because they have a more tech savvy development team that they can create better plans, lower prices. They don't have the institutional uh, just rigidity that a lot of the large players have. These are the ones that advertise on TV, right? They got big marketing budgets. They've been around forever. Those are the bukas, right? But for the long tail, the innovative carriers that need to be a little bit more competitive, we give brokers access to those carriers, and we do that really fast, right? We're small, we're independent, so we don't have any overlord to answer to. So we work with the independent benefits brokers that want access to the long tail of highly vetted carriers that the larger houses probably are just going to shoot you into one of the bukas, which is totally fine. We are not anti-buka. We're just non-buka. And that actually, we talk about that in the book because one of the characters in the book, he's the founder, right? And he talks about the differences between all these things. So I get to incorporate that into the book, which is really cool.
And the names you came up with, Ryan, hilarious. Al Dente, which
Yeah,
is
yeah.
one of the characters, and another one's Leon. I'm going all for. I try to memorize everything before it, but Leonidas, I think, was
Oh
another.
yeah. I was like, what's the most intense name I could have? But I like a good pun, and I've always wanted, I think, so Bobby Flay is a chef,
Yeah.
as you know. He's been a chef for a long time. I'm like, his wife's name should be Souffle. So I made it a character Souffle, but it's not Flay. I didn't want to run into like copyright issues. So I made it Fillet, which is a nice steak as well. So I have Souffle, Bobby Flay, and they actually have a pan company that Sue runs, and they actually, this is true. Bobby Flay has a pan company that he's like endorses, and they're like, "Oh, our pan company's really growing. We're gonna need some more benefits help." So Souffle is a really good name. I'll break the news to you on one of the other names. So his mentor, Al's mentor, is excuse me. It was going to be named Dave Gravy just because I'm like, okay, we'll make him Gravy, whatever. But then I was walking around and I was like, what if we named him something that was like a steak? And I'm like, maybe we'll make him Sir Loin, like Sir Charles Loin. And I'm like, I don't know. It'd be weird to have just some random dude named Sirloin in X town, America. There's no towns in this. Like, I tried to make it like anybody could be like, oh, he's obviously in this town. No, there's no towns. But I'm like, nah, I don't know about sirloin. So I chose the biggest steak of all, well, probably second biggest, which is Porterhouse. So his mentor's name is Porterhouse, and there's a couple other names in there that I just had such fun writing and developing the names for. I would just walk around my house and make it really funny. Oh, another one. So Mark Cuban is really big in the healthcare space right now, right?
Right, right.
He's
That's
big
right.
on PBM transparency. If you don't know what PBM transparency is, it's like pharmacy benefits, right? And we actually did an interview with Mark Cuban on this topic, which was very cool. And Al watches it and he learns things about it, and that's incorporated into the book. But I was talking with my wife, and I'm like, we should have or Mark Cuban in this. And one of the other names of the characters is Jim Chalet, which is based off the name of a guy named Jim Lodge. And lodge is like a chalet is a nice lodge,
That's
right? So
right.
we're like, maybe we'll change Mark Cuban's name. She's like, it needs to be Mark Panini because panini is also a tasty sandwich.
That's true.
Um, but I had to, I'm like, okay, Mark Cuban is way better for SEO than Mark Panini is. So I had to cut Mark Panini out, and it's all Mark Cuban. And hopefully he agrees and reshares it or something. But because SEO definitely needs to figure into the book.
Yeah, a little bump from Mark Cuban, and
Yeah.
you'd be set. It's like I'd hate to say the old days because it really, to me, it wasn't that long ago. But somebody could sit down with Oprah, a fledgling author, and boom, 100
Yeah.
New York Times bestseller
Oh yeah.
before their pants even hit the leather of that couch. Boom, it
Yeah.
was an instant. But now with media being extremely decentralized, I don't
Mhm.
know. Obviously there's pros and cons to this. So everybody would try to get on Letterman or Oprah, and now it's,
I
you got
feel
to
like
go on.
now the way you get your book out there is doing right now what I'm doing, which is podcasts, right?
That's right.
Or if you have your own channel, that's what you do too, because that's how a lot of these authors, their main thing might be the podcast, and after the podcast, you get a book, right?
That's right.
Gary Vee is a really good example of this.
Yes. I
He's
could tell
like,
we read a lot of the same
it's
stuff.
like he reads. He's like, I don't read a lot of books, but I write more books than I read, right? But he's got so many different things. He's got Facebook, he's got Instagram and TikTok and blah 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 and whatever. And maybe he'll sell a book to you every 2 years. But the platform is so important, and now it's a platform game. And if you can develop an audience on a platform, this is one of the things Al Dente learns. He's like, you got to be on LinkedIn because this is where the audience is,
That's
and
right.
this is where people discover you. because we'll probably put this on LinkedIn. It's going on YouTube, which is the biggest search engine for podcasts, surely.
That's right.
Maybe it'll go on Spotify, which is kind of waning in importance, I think. But like YouTube is so big, LinkedIn is so big. But being able to distribute the message to the audience that you want to reach is way easier now. But it's like, okay, how do you really focus and do it there?
It's interesting because I actually dropped Facebook this week
Hmm.
and to concentrate wholly on LinkedIn
Hmm.
because my content is always business related. I mean, I have other interests that I would
Yeah.
put on Facebook, but Facebook didn't really get me, and a lot of the stuff I was getting on Facebook was very distracting. And LinkedIn, I had an art gallery a long time ago, and the best way to say it is LinkedIn is better at curation, whereas
Hmm.
Facebook seems to me now a free for all. X seems to be a free for all.
What do you mean by
Uh,
curation?
in other words, the quality of what is being suggested to me is much more relevant on LinkedIn.
Hmm.
So on Facebook, not only is my feed full of AI trash videos of things that
Yeah.
didn't actually happen, and
Yeah.
it I have to be careful with this question because I mean, careful with this word because it's means way stronger than this, but some of it's outright misinformation, like
Hmm.
that didn't happen.
Yeah.
And so I don't really like seeing that type of stuff. I read international news every day. Try to stay up on everything that's going on. And when something is out
Yeah.
there, a video of something that didn't happen, I really don't like that because it's hard
Yeah.
enough to figure out what's really going on
I know.
in the first place. So that's why I spend a lot of time I'll look at legislation or I'll look at statistics. I don't
Yeah.
tend to watch media sources anyway.
Yeah.
But
Well,
anyway,
I also
go ahead.
think that goes to it supports the idea of being a part of associations too, right? Because associating anything with something else is really important in terms of brand building. And I didn't put this in the book, but I really should have. It'll be in the next one, and that is joining associations.
That's right.
Al Dente speaks to an association, but he'll probably ask to join next in the next book. But I feel like when you join or partner with an association, you borrow their credibility, right? And if you borrow it correctly and you are also legit, then that elevates your association. And maybe LinkedIn is better at doing this than Facebook is, but because like if you have a if you are associating with a institution of high credibility, it's way easier to have your status raised in general. And this is also kind of an SEO principle, which is like if you are being linked to by a website that has high domain authority, yours will be raised. So they've kind of this is an SEO phrase, but like Google has they have quantified how to create trust and how to get people back. And that's domain authority, right? I think it's very interesting, but it kind of goes along the ideas of you want things you can trust. And for you, it sounds like, Robert, Facebook is not somewhere where you would go for trustworthy stuff. But
That's
LinkedIn
right.
is way better because it's honest, whereas Facebook is maybe not as much.
That's right. That's right. And some of that AI stuff, I think it's funny. I'd say
Yeah,
more than anything, if you looked at my YouTube
yeah,
intake, it's business content, music, and really ignorant comedic, the worst, silliest, most. But on YouTube, I get to choose when I see that. I
yeah,
get to choose,
yeah.
sometimes I'll eat dessert before dinner, right? I won't always
Oh,
eat the burger first. Sometimes I'll order the ice cream I'm crazy like that, I
okay.
mix it up. But on
It's a really good
Facebook,
way to do it.
sometimes I'm just given a bunch of desserts and a lot of
Oh,
times I just want a steak. So I feel like I'm a lot more in control of what I'm
mm,
consuming on YouTube. And I think the quality
yeah,
ratio is a lot higher on LinkedIn. I have to give Reid Hoffman a lot of credit. As a matter of fact, my second book has a lot to do with it's using LinkedIn as the vehicle to talk about making human connections with people and
yeah.
networking. So,
I've heard that it's also a much better place to find new business. LinkedIn. I saw something on Twitter the other day, and some guy who had a lot of followers, he's like, "Hey, are you guys getting anything from LinkedIn? Or is Twitter better?" And like 600 people replied being like, I've found so much business through LinkedIn. And I think there's two environments for LinkedIn, right? You have the news feed where everybody is humbled and honored, right? And there's a thing in the book. I can't stand it. There's a thing in the book where Al Dente is recommended against saying you're humbled and honored in a less than diplomatic way. But anyways, there's that area, right, where you can comment and stuff like that. But then there's also the messaging, right, where I think it's probably the most direct way to engage with people and really develop better relationships because you can direct message people, right? And if you do it correctly, you can be very effective at driving people down that awareness decision or consideration decision funnel, and you can drive business. And I've done that. This is where things come from, right? I got speaking gigs by doing that. Also because I was associated with an association. But if you can marry the credibility up with the familiarity by posting videos or photos on LinkedIn, and then people see it, maybe they connect with you, and then you message them in a genuine way, because I get so many emails saying, "Oh, I saw you're in Mendham, and I'm helping people only in Mendham," and I'm like, "There's 5,000 people in Mendham. I doubt it. I
My
will
buddy
not
from
answer."
Mendham's probably watching this right now.
Yeah. Oh yeah, you said you know somebody in Mendham.
Yeah, I went up there and actually caught some fish. That's my whole thing. I can go, the joke is I can go anywhere and catch a fish.
Oh yeah.
So, but it's beautiful where you are for the
Oh, it
people that
is.
don't know. It's gorgeous.
Yeah,
And
it's
who's
like
your
New
most
England and New Jersey. People don't expect New Jersey to
ah,
be so like, I don't know, New Englandy, but it's very nice.
it's very safe, very clean, beautiful, historic. I
It's
mean,
very safe.
it really had it all. Well, I don't want to get steer too far away from the
Sure.
book. So I think it's, what is it? The 13th is your
Yeah.
big launch,
Next
January 13th.
Tuesday.
And that's going to be Kindle and paperback, or you
Mhm.
got some more audiobook in the
Well,
works or anything?
okay, this is a really good question. So initially I was not going to do an audiobook. And I think I need to because I want to like eat my own dog food here because my belief is that you need to meet people where you are in marketing, right? Some people, one of the first chapters, this guy's like, I am not a text person. I learned as dyslexic, but this guy right here, he makes videos and I learned more about X topic by this video that ever because I'm dyslexic, right? So that's one of the things that Al encounters in the book. And so, like I said, I think you need to make content in multiple formats, whether that's text content, video content, audio content. So I definitely need to be making the audio version. I think what I'm going to do is, and I'll say it right here. Oh man, I got to commit now. I'm going to host LinkedIn live events and read the book, and
Wow. All right.
I'll take that audio video file and I can make that into the audio version. So that's probably a January, February, maybe a March thing. It's honestly not a long book, 150 pages. That's going to be like 4 hours of reading.
Yeah,
But
yeah, yeah.
right now I'm like coughing a lot because I was sick over the winter, so I needed to push it back a little bit. So
No, that's
I will
great.
make it into an audio book, but initially it's going to be text, video, and then there's also like worksheets involved because all of the things that this character Al Dente does, he's using tools, and these are tools that we have created for our brokers to use, right? Maybe it's just like a simple, very, very simple CRM system for tracking your leads and your RFPs that you have out, right? Or maybe we call this an healthcare disruption tool where if you're a broker and you need to figure out, okay, I got this list of, it's called a census, right? A census is a list of people's ages and their where they're based, like zip codes, right? To figure out, okay, based on their age and their gender and their zip code, which healthcare providers are in their network, right? Because there's really not an easy way to do that if you're trying to figure out which plan I should go with, because you're going to have to go to all the different carriers that you're looking at to figure out how I can find the most pragmatic plan based upon the people that are going to be being offered this benefit plan, right? So we have a tool for that. This is something we've built, right? And we're refining as we go along. So this is a tool as well. So there's a lot of different resources in the book that are made available to people. But yeah, it's going to be text, or Kindle, print, and then an audiobook as well.
Sure. Well, I'll make a confession. When I wrote Scintilla, I was much more the whole thing. The reason why part of the reason why I wrote the book is I was a lot more excited about doing the audio
Oh, really?
because
Wow.
because yeah,
You got a good audio voice. That's why.
n- say exactly because that's where I do my reps. So
Uh,
I was very
uh,
excited about
yeah.
doing the audio. That's the one. I mean, look at my face. I did.
You could,
Nature didn't give me much to work with. It gave me a
you
voice.
have great hair. So one of
I
the
love it.
things like with audio, you can infuse so much more personality into it,
Yeah.
right? With this like text, obviously it's going to be a different thing, right? You can't express as much sarcasm with just italics. So you can infuse more personality in the audio version. So I totally get it.
Yeah, well, plus I have a face for radio. That was the that was the other thing. But I love what you said. Meet the customer where they are,
Yeah.
and I have to make a confession. If I was on my deathbed and the doctor came in and said, "Robert, we can save your life, but you just have to read this book," I would say, "Doc, do you have it in audiobook? And if not, I'd probably just
Uh,
die." I haven't read a print book. I've looked at some, but to go from cover to cover, it's probably been 3 years. Now, I've
hmm.
done upwards of 400 audiobooks, and I go through at least four a week,
Listen
and
to them.
probably,
Wow. Okay.
yeah. And
Do you do
now I'm
like
on,
double speed or something?
yeah, yeah, of
Ah,
course, of
my
course.
sister
Now,
does that too. I can't hear
but
it.
but I'll go back and re-listen though.
Mhm.
A lot of a lot of the books are, and of course, I know I can tell by the way you talk, you consume quite a lot of books too. And you brought something up earlier that was very important. The principles don't change.
Mhm.
So when they're talking about that part of the book, I tune in, I slow it down, I'll back it up. And there are books that I've listened to, like The Road Less Traveled. I've probably listened to that 7 times. There are some really heavy
Who's that
hitters.
book? Is that by Keith Cunningham? Is that it? No, that's
Um,
The Road Less Stupid. That's a different book. Yeah.
Okay, now the road less traveled was M. Scott Peck,
Hmm.
MD, and then another one was Psycho-Cybernetics.
Oh,
Great book, and there's just some heavy hitters that I go back to over and over again. Dan Martell's "Buy Back Your
yeah.
Time," I think one of the best books written in the last 2 years. And I like Dan as a person too. That's a big,
Yeah.
his personality really, really sells it. But do you want, and of course, we've got that link that you provided
Yeah.
down in the description of this. Is that the link you want people to go to connect
Yeah.
with you and get the book?
Well, you can go to Amazon to get the book. I have my LinkedIn as well. We have our brokersbloc.com website. And I can send a link to people if they want to get like the first 3 chapters just to get a little taste of what the story is. I also have it. That might be more appropriate because sometimes people don't want to commit to the first book, they're going to get. Although I'm going to do a 99-cent offering until it goes live for pre-sale.
Wow.
So I
Okay.
can give you all 3 of those if you want.
That's fantastic. And anything of course, we're both members on Podmatch. I talk about
Yeah.
Podmatch all the time because I think
Yeah.
that it's a great place to
Yeah.
meet quality guests like yourself. And I'm very privileged to get your time. I know you're extremely busy, so thank you so much for that. I do want to ask you this
Yeah.
because this is relevant to your book. Well, you can tell me how relevant it is, but this was one of the questions that I came up with kind of later in the day today. Perfection is perfection. How did I put this? Yeah, it's almost like perfection. People that think that they're going into perfection, it's actually because I don't like the way that I wrote this. So people pursue perfection
Sure.
wrongly, like they're wasting a lot of time trying to come up with the
Yeah. Yeah.
perfect idea. So we talk a lot about minimally viable product on here,
Sure.
and I always say just get it out there
Yeah.
because what you're going to be selling 5, 10 years from now is going to probably be
It's gonna be way
vastly
different.
different than
Yeah.
right now. So
It's
can I get you to
fleeting,
riff on that?
you
Yeah.
know? I think one of the principles in this book was this guy's dad. He was a perfectionist. He did some things very well, but that probably prevented him from doing a lot more business because everything had to be perfect. And in some instances, that is true. But even bridges need to be maintained every year, or the bridge is going to break. Right? We saw that Italy happened a few years back.
Yes.
Our infrastructure in this country is kind of crumbling, so it needs
Yes.
to be maintained.
Yes.
Right? Internet sites, they have a 99.99999. That's 5 nines. That's how often they are up every year. That's like a high quality. website uptime, right? Because they need to be maintained. So I think the general concept of the book is you need to be able to put your best effort forth until the time to hit send happens, right? Because the plans are going to change, right? The audience is going to change. They're going to need different things. So don't let the perfection or the curse of perfection, which comes up in the book, don't let that prevent you from just moving forward, or you're not going to go anywhere. Um, there's a I, Elon Musk has a really good concept of this, which is you need to have a high decision velocity. Maybe I said high decision velocity, but like 20% of the decisions you make are going to be wrong, whatever. But if you can make enough decisions, you're going to make progress towards whatever you want to be doing, and you can just fix the things that didn't work later on. But if you're waiting for 100% perfection every time, you're never going to make any progress. You're going to be left behind. Competitors are going to get ahead of you. So I would say avoid the curse of perfection because that is not the way to get ahead.
I love it. And thank you so much for saving me on that because it was a clunky question, but your answer was brilliant. I think about how ships navigate the ocean. There's
Sure.
no straight lines in
Yeah.
that form of navigation. They use what they call point-to-point navigation. So there's
Yeah.
all this for the sailboat enthusiast out there. I'm not one, but I've read a little bit about it. They'll tack. They're tacking, and
Yeah.
ultimately the way to get to the destination might be a series of recorrections. And I
Yeah.
think that's a great way to look at
Swimming in a
business.
triathlon is the same thing because you're looking down at the ground
Wow.
or the ocean, there's nothing there. And eventually you got to look up to make sure you're going towards the right
Oh
buoy,
no. Yeah.
right? So you got to be practicing actually doing that because if you're not, you're going to be going the opposite direction eventually because there's going to be a current or something like that and you're going to get kicked in the face. You will get kicked in the face, but you got to look up eventually to course correct. That's just a part of everything, you know?
I love that, Ryan. Was there any questions you wish I'd asked or anything I left on the table? I want
I
to be
know.
as thorough
I
as I
think
can.
you were very thorough. We talked about, I think the fun part was writing the book and kind of developing the characters. We talked about that. People know how to get it. So this is awesome.
I really appreciate your time, Ryan, and it's great to get another person from Mendham,
Yeah.
for my friend Anthony out there. He's a great guy. He's my consigliere, so
Oh, really?
he's a great. But yeah, there's good people up there. I met a lot of wonderful people in
It's
Mendham,
awesome.
and now I met a new one. So thank you so much, Ryan. I hope people connect with you, get a copy of your book, and when you do the audio book, I've already followed you on Amazon, by the way, and I encourage other
Oh,
people to do this because
hmm,
that way, every time you release a book, I'm going to be notified.
that's
And
cool.
if the book comes out as an audio book, and when it comes out as audio, I'll probably
Yeah.
get the Kindle anyway. But when you get the audio book, you can count on me for one of the downloads.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you so much. If you don't mind, I'll end the stream and we'll
Yeah.
keep the chat going.
Okay.
Okay, there we go. I think it takes a couple seconds for YouTube to really clear it out,
Okay.
although we're